Well, what a wonderful sight. In-person PONI conference, room packed, and even the tube strike didn't stop us getting here. So that's absolutely marvelous. I don't think when we fixed the date for this conference, I think, quite a number of months ago, I don't think any of us imagined what the context for the conference would be. We certainly didn't imagine the tube strike that ended just an hour ago, but hasn't stopped people getting here. And I know some of you have had hard journeys to get here as a result, but I think it will be worth it. And I'm not referring even to the fact that last night in Westminster we had some pretty dramatic events, which I certainly wasn't anticipating only a couple of weeks ago, never mind 6 months ago. But I am referring to the war going on right now on our continent in Ukraine. I've been involved in UK PONI since its beginning and with RUSI's nuclear program as a whole, from when those started back in 2008 and 2010, respectively. And there really has never been a time when the issues that we are discussing today have been more important and more relevant. We're now in the middle, maybe the early stages, who knows, of the most serious nuclear-tinged crisis since 1962. And I fear the most dangerous moment in nuclear terms may yet be to come. Who knows what the next months will hold. And when we founded PONI, it seemed that security studies in universities, at least, was more focused on study of terrorism and state building. Those were the areas in which people were enrolling in PhD programs and doing masters and so on. And nuclear was seen a bit exotic. Why are you still talking about these issues? And maybe more recently, even more recently, lots of talk about grey area operations and cybersecurity, all really important issues. And when we talked about nuclear weapons certainly in think tanks and to some extent even in government, it was as much about Iran or North Korea, arms control agreements, the future of the NPT, all really important issues. But today, we are in the middle of a crisis in which there's a real premium for expert analysis of how to manage a deterrent relationship with a ruthless and hostile nuclear-armed power, a power that, of course, has been a nuclear weapon state since 1949. It's not a new proliferating state. It was the world's second nuclear power only 4 years after Hiroshima. And literally, the risk of nuclear war is low, but it's not zero. There are no straightforward answers, no straightforward formulae which our policymakers can adopt. But literally the fate of our countries and our continent does depend on our governments getting it right. So there is a real premium for expert analysis. Now, what I do know is that whatever happens in this crisis and however long it lasts, nuclear weapons are still going to exist in the arsenals of at least 9 countries 10 or 20 years from now. And we're going to have to work very hard to ensure that those weapons are never used through deterrence as well as through arms control and conflict management. It is going to remain one of the most important challenges facing the world in the decades to come. So it's, from my point of view, that makes the work that PONI's doing even more important. As you will see, I think our agenda reflects the unique model of working that is UK PONI. It's about building the nuclear expertise we will need in the world of the 2020s, certainly, but also the world of the 2030s and 2040s. It's about bringing academic, policy, and practitioner elements of our nuclear community together. Those different segments getting on with their own jobs don't meet often enough, but they're all essential for our national effort. It's about bringing the civil nuclear and defense nuclear communities together and helping in the professional development of early and mid-career professionals in both those communities. And it's about doing our bit to promote diversity and inclusion in our profession, not least because a diversity of background and experience helps build the diversity of thinking that is the heart of successful societies. In the end, one of the reasons why I think Western societies, for all their divisions, evident even last night in the House of Commons, I suspect, the reason why we're successful in the end, because that diversity of thought makes us less likely to make mistakes and more able to innovate as challenges develop. So I think even the deepest expert among you, I suspect, will have much to learn from those topics on the agenda, perhaps those which are particularly unfamiliar to you. I think we've got 10 presentations talking about arms control and nuclear proliferation on land, but also in space. The role of nuclear power in providing cost-effective answers to energy security and climate change. Preventing asteroid Armageddon through nuclear strikes and China's nuclear modernization. And that's just a summary of some of the presentations that really struck me. And I'm also delighted that in addition to your presentations, we have 2 keynotes from PONI Jenkins, who will join me in a moment, from the State Department of the United States, and Samantha Job from the Foreign Office, both at the heart of their government's policy deliberations on nuclear matters at this time of great uncertainty. So I think there's something for everyone, I hope. And to round it all off, there's going to be a well-deserved drinks reception at the end of the day. So finally, before asking Ambassador Jenkins to join me on the stage, I'd just like to say thank you to all the staff involved in making this possible, to Anna, to Jack, to Connor, to Marika from RUSI, especially actually to Anna, who is seriously unwell today, I'm afraid, and I know is gutted not to be here, given all the effort she's put into helping put this together, not least in terms of helping mentor a number of the presenters today. And I'd also like to thank our AV team for ensuring all these mics work and everything is flawless. Everybody's done a really impressive job today. So, Ambassador Jenkins, would you like to join me up here? Thank you very much. I am delighted that for the first keynote speech of this conference, I'm able to introduce Ambassador PONI Jenkins, who is Under Secretary of State for Arms Control and International Security Affairs in the U.S. Department of State. I understand that in the United States you're called T, and I did see your tweet last night from Fortnum and Mason pouring a cup of English breakfast tea, or just tea as we call it here, and no doubt you're going to explain to us in your presentation what this tea means, because I'm sure all your American colleagues know very well, and perhaps some of our British government people do as well, but I have absolutely no idea, so I'd be very interested in that. PONI was a member of the UK PONI Board of Advisors before she took on her current position in July 2021, and previously, during the Trump presidency, she founded and led the nonprofit Women of Color Advancing Peace and Security, which, like PONI, is an organization devoted to professional development of those entering and building a career in our professions. And then before that, she served in various capacities in the US government after completing her PhD in 2005, I think, which looked at international instruments to combat nuclear proliferation. So with that background, I can think of no one better qualified to update us on current US thinking on arms control and international security. Bonnie, over to you.
Good morning. How is everyone today? Okay, good. Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you for inviting me here today. I really appreciate these opportunities to talk about some of the challenging issues that we're dealing with right now. And it's really daunting to be in this position right now when so much of the international security landscape is changing. Everything from the Russia-Ukraine war to emerging technologies to the rise of China and these issues of peace and security. So it's daunting on the one hand, but I've always been encouraged to look at it in terms of how can we take this time and revisit issues and rethink issues. And so many of the things that we're dealing with right now don't have easy solutions and easy answers. So it makes it even more challenging because we don't know what next month's going to look like in terms of the Russia-Ukraine war. We don't know how we're going to deal with some of these emerging technology issues and how they're going to impact some of the things we're going to talk about today. So it's a challenge, but one of the things that I always say is it's great to have experts and others who are interested in these issues working to address them and helping to find the solutions. So the more people we can have thinking about these issues, looking at it from different perspectives, not just experts in nuclear issues, but experts in regional issues, experts in technology, experts in other areas that could lend their viewpoint to how we address these issues. Because I think we really do need to widen the aperture of people who work on these issues, because the challenges are so broad that we can't afford not to have everyone at the table. So I'm going to read my remarks, and then we have a little time, maybe we can do a Q&A. So this conference is an opportunity to offer a next-generation perspective on the state of nuclear issues and its impact in a security landscape that is ever-changing. While I may not be considered the next generation anymore, I know that many of you are, so I want to take the opportunity to share my perspectives, not only as a United States Undersecretary of State for Arms Control and International Security, but also as someone with 30-plus years of experience working in international security and in arms control, disarmament, and nonproliferation, covering chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear issues, and increasingly so in emerging technologies. So I really want to thank you for having me here today, and thank you, DG Chalmers, for the very kind introduction. It is really a pleasure to have the opportunity to share my perspectives and priorities on the headline issues of today and the trend lines for the challenges to come. We face a number of challenges. Russia's unprovoked and brutal invasion of Ukraine has forced us to seriously consider gaps that now exist in the security landscape, including the challenges posed by the proliferation of disinformation. The People's Republic of China's rapid modernization of its military and economy reflects an ambition to create a sphere of influence in the Indo-Pacific and beyond, while seeking to become the world's sole leading power. Technology is advancing, as are the opportunities and challenges posed by an increased interest in space, while at the same time, climate change and limited resources can lead to conflict if not adequately addressed. We must consider new ways to address the challenges we face in international security. In the wake of Russia's further invasion of Ukraine, some express concerns about what this means for the future of arms control and the effectiveness of international agreements. The challenges to and violations of international agreements, especially regarding arms control and nonproliferation by a handful of countries, including Russia, is very concerning. In fact, Putin's actions seriously undermine the foundations of the international order that has provided security for much of this world that suffered 2 world wars. Russia is selectively implementing or outright violating many of its arms control obligations and commitments. Let us not forget that Putin joined the leaders of China, France, the United Kingdom, and the United States in affirming the importance of diplomacy to avoid military confrontation, just weeks prior to Russia's further invasion into Ukraine. At the same time, other ongoing issues, such as the DPRK's continued insistence on advancing its unlawful weapons of mass destruction and ballistic missile program, the uncertain future of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, and the growing challenges posed by the People's Republic of China raises the frustration around arms control, disarmament, and nonproliferation, which is understandable. Despite these challenges, arms control remains an important means to increase global security because it reduces risk and enhances peace and stability. And we must fortify our approaches and recommit to the basic principles of international security, strategic stability, and arms control efforts that our predecessors were able to ensure through the power of diplomacy. The reality is this: the importance of arms control will only grow as we face competitors who are pursuing reckless and destabilizing buildups of their nuclear forces. The most serious long-term challenge we face is posed by the People's Republic of China, whose rapid and aggressive nuclear buildup, among other actions, is a new challenge that requires our serious attention. The accelerating pace of the PRC's nuclear expansion is reflective of their intention to have at least 1,000 warheads by 2030, exceeding the size the United States projected just 2 years ago. There is no formal dialogue with the PRC on nuclear weapons limitations, and the PRC refuses to be transparent about the purposes and direction of its nuclear strategy. Their without limits partnership with Russia warrants a serious look at its end goals, and China's transformation into a global power has made possible by the stability and the opportunities international order provides. That is, the rules-based international order made up of systems of international agreements, rules, procedures, principles, and institutions, and the nations of the world have worked hard to build together over the past 70 years. The PRC's subversion of the very order that allowed it to thrive and its intent to create a system more favorable for authoritarian governments is not going unnoticed and must be addressed. On that note, let me refer to Secretary of State Blinken's remarks last month, highlighting the administration's approach to the PRC and how the United States will be engaging with China going forward. The bottom line is this: we will work with our strong network of allies and partners around the world to shape the strategic environment around Beijing. This means that, among other things, we will continue to engage with the international community to strengthen arms control and related international agreements. At the same time, we will continue to engage in and remain open to meaningful dialogue with countries such as the PRC. We remain committed to laying the groundwork for future arms control, in particular by pursuing follow-on measures to the New START treaty with Russia. We will continue to adhere to our moratorium to nuclear explosive testing and support the CTBT's eventual entry into force. We will continue to maximize support for enhanced verification capabilities and strengthen implementation of existing instruments, such as the Chemical Weapons Convention and the Biological Weapons Convention. On the latter, let me note the United States believes this is incredibly important, as evidenced by my recent appointment of a special representative to the BWC, a strong statement of our dedication to strengthen the Biological Weapons Convention and its implementation. The U.S. has now assumed the chair of the P5 process, and we will continue to work with our P5 colleagues to strengthen the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, or the NPT, and its 3 pillars. Our goal had been to carry on many of the current work streams, particularly the further development of the Strategic Risk Reduction work stream, which will be part of a P5 working group on doctrines and strategic risk reduction, as noted in the P5 working paper on strategic risk for the NPT Review Conference, or REVCON. However, in light of Russia's further invasion of Ukraine, we are continuing to assess how to move forward. Certainly, Russia's actions have not diminished our commitment to the NPT. Talking about the NPT, back in November, I laid out the Biden-Harris administration's vision for the 10th NPT Review Conference in my remarks to Chatham House. In those remarks, I described our approach to all three NPT pillars: nonproliferation, disarmament, and peaceful uses of nuclear energy. I encourage everyone here to read those remarks. They describe our principles for a successful review conference, and those considerations continue to guide our review conference preparations. That being said, we cannot ignore the ways in which the world has changed since then, nor the implications those changes have for the NPT and the non-proliferation regime. As my colleague, Ambassador Adam Scheinman, the Special Representative of the President for Nuclear Non-Proliferation, has said, Russia's war against Ukraine threatens every core precept of the NPT. We will be perfectly clear about how these actions threaten the non-proliferation regime, even aside from the overarching issues surrounding Russia's atrocities and blatant violations of Ukraine's territorial integrity. We trust NPT parties to call out Russia's transgressions and join us in working to advance this essential treaty. A critical component of the non-proliferation regime is a universal and consistent application of safeguards, particularly the additional protocol. We must reinvigorate our efforts to promote the combination of a comprehensive safeguard agreement and an additional protocol as a de facto standard for how NPT non-nuclear weapon states parties should implement their obligation to accept IAEA safeguards. We will continue to pursue a positive outcome for the NPT RevCon, even and especially in moments of crisis. And the non-proliferation regime remains as critical as ever, and the NPT continues to be its cornerstone. It is important that we also stay flexible in considering ways we pursue risk reduction and future arms control. There is no single elegant solution to managing nuclear or other 21st century risks. We must be creative to find ways forward with partners and allies, as well as those who we disagree with. We must consider different and novel approaches, forms, and initiatives that we have not traditionally used before, such as codes of conduct, and implementation of best practices. The recent voluntary commitment announced by the United States to not conduct destructive, direct, extent, anti-satellite missile testing is one example of such an initiative that also demonstrates our commitment to reducing the risk to the outer space environment from the testing of this type of weapon. We are now working to encourage other countries to make similar commitments and to establish this as a new norm of responsible behavior. We are also looking at the nexus of clean energy and national security and how we can help protect allies and partners' critical energy infrastructure as they pursue the benefits offered by advanced nuclear technologies while meeting the highest standards of safety, security, and nonproliferation. This goes hand in hand with the urgent reminder of the security risks posed by Russia and others' energy diplomacy, and how cooperation and coordination among like-minded allies, partners, and nuclear suppliers can enhance our common purpose for nuclear nonproliferation and energy security. As I noted earlier, technology is advancing, as are the opportunities and challenges posed by technological advancements and developments. At the same time, climate change and limited resources can lead to conflict if not addressed. In other words, international security is becoming more comprehensive, and so must our approaches. One of the areas that offer promise in addressing these issues is in new and emerging technologies. New and emerging technologies is an area where we find evolving challenges that no longer fit the narrative of hard security or traditional security. As the world changes and develops, we face evolving challenges and threats in new spaces. In the digital arena, where disinformation thrives, for sure, but also in outer space, quantum computing, advanced manufacturing, biotechnologies, renewable energy generation and storage, and artificial intelligence, just to name a few. These critical and emerging technologies are increasingly at the core of our common endeavors with allies and partners. They have the potential to yield enormous benefits to people and societies worldwide and improve how we live, think, and go about our daily routines. Moreover, they provide opportunities to enhance the security of the United States, our allies, and partners. However, at the same time, they are also a focus of our competition with rivals and adversaries and have the potential to do a great harm in the wrong hands. Used by malign actors, these technologies can be repurposed for malicious use and weaponized with the intent to harm millions. Some technologies present significant risks to national security, often because of their novel defense or security applications, critical to our national security and economic strength. Therefore, it is vital that we identify and determine how a given technology and its applications need to be controlled with common sense rules. Emerging technologies will profoundly affect our lives and the lives of our children and grandchildren, and directly impact jobs, innovation, and competitiveness. This is why shaping norms regarding the use of these technologies is critical today. Last month, I visited Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories in California to learn firsthand how artificial intelligence, or AI, is being used to advance our prosperity and national security. I had incredible discussions with experts there about the pace and scope of AI development. It was a great opportunity for me and my colleagues to understand some of the issues we need to address in the coming months. There are so many questions. How can militaries use artificial intelligence in a responsible or predictable manner? Should artificial intelligence enabled weapon systems be permitted to launch attacks without approval from a human being? What is the impact of artificial intelligence on strategic stability? What is the role of diplomacy in addressing these issues? These are the types of questions we think about daily. I would like to return to the PRC for a brief moment. I am particularly concerned about the threats posed by the PRC's strategy of military-civil fusion, or MCF. MCF brings together the PRC's civilian economy and defense establishment so that advanced and emerging technologies that drive China's economic engine also advance its military modernization. Their aim is to evolve the People's Liberation Army into a world-class military by ensuring that technologies, talent, know-how, intellectual property, and financial resources provided by the PRC civilians are fully and seamlessly integrated to improve and enhance the PLA's capabilities. The blurred lines of civil and military development compound the challenges we face in the security landscape. The PRC exploits its global relationship to acquire technologies and information through illicit and licit means through trade, investment, joint research and development, and exploiting academic collaboration, as well as through intellectual property theft and forced tech transfer. Often the PRC acquires various technologies and then diverts them to its national defense systems without the knowledge or consent of the researcher or business partner. As such, implementation of MCF directly challenges traditional non-proliferation tools, including export controls and investment screenings, by making it impossible to trust end-user commitments and peaceful uses assurances that underpin global trade in technology and research cooperation. There is no doubt MCF poses a significant threat to the national security and economic well-being of the United States, our allies, and partner countries. We must be vigilant in our efforts to mitigate the military-civil fusion threats to our national security, economy, and intellectual property, while having the smallest possible impact on the collaborative science, technology, and business ecosystem. This requires new thinking, out-of-the-box, and creative solutions. This approach not only applies to current threats and the landscape assessments I mentioned earlier, but also applies to our efforts in working with allies and partners across the conventional and non-conventional domains to deter increasingly asymmetric risks posed by our adversaries. That is why, as I previously mentioned, it is so important that we now consider new ways to address these new challenges we face in international security. I cannot stress this enough. And to address these challenges, we need to include in all diversity of thought to succeed. Within the State Department, we are committed to modernizing the workforce to ensure that we recruit, retain, and promote the best and brightest talents. President Biden has made it clear that promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility is a national security imperative. Secretary Blinken agrees that diversity is mission critical for us. So we are doing the hard work of confronting our past and looking into the future to make the work of public service for peace and security worth pursuing and staying in. We are elevating new voices, encouraging more innovation, and investing in expertise that is not traditionally considered pathways for a career in foreign service. Looking out, I also work to ensure we have diversity in building a network of expertise, both in and out of government. Only by embracing this type of inclusiveness can we gain the insights and perspectives we need for these challenges. An initiative of mine that I am spearheading is called the T Family Brain Trust. The T Family is how we colloquially refer to the policy bureaus overseen by my office within the State Department. It is a network of experts that includes the expertise of those in nuclear security backgrounds with government, research-based organizations, as well as leaders in business, science, academic institutions, and non-governmental organizations. They reflect a wide variety of scientific, technology, military, diplomatic, political, cultural, and social backgrounds and identities. We cannot confront the challenges of the 21st century without the full participation of every person. And I encourage everyone to consider and share best practices on how to bring on board, empower, and elevate diverse voices and perspectives into decision-making processes that you are involved in your own line of work. To close, I want to mention that last month, on the 50th anniversary of the signing of the first Strategic Arms Limitation Talks Agreement in 1972, also known as SALT I, I presented my 9 priorities for my office and the 3 bureaus that I oversee at the State Department. I encourage you to read the remarks, which you could find online, and many of which I have referred to today. They are also available in a more condensed form on my Twitter account. SALT I was a groundbreaking arms limitation treaty between the United States and the Soviet Union, and the foundation for all arms limitation talks that followed. To me, it is a reminder that even as today, we face monumental international security challenges, just like our predecessors, we will prevail through the power of diplomacy. Our leadership and engagement matters, and collaboration and cooperation with allies and partners matter now more than ever. Thank you.
Stay here or come down here?